So, listen to this. What is Harry Kane's legacy? If you asked a casual fan to explain his career to you, what would he say? On my second channel, I said Harry Kane's second penalty versus France was a legacy-defining moment for him, an opportunity to redeem himself as something more than an internationally known serial bottler. Being an essential part of what could have been England's run towards a second World Cup title would surely make up for a career that left fans seeing him as little more than someone you should feel sorry for. As harsh as that may sound, Harry Kane has scored 330 goals over his career, and not only is there not a single one that is especially remarkable, but he has 0 trophies to show for it. His goals are almost meaningless. You put him beside someone like Drogba, who never scored at the rates Kane is capable of, and his 12 goals in 15 cup finals outshine Kane completely. At the end of the day, greatness is not defined by how many goals you can score, but by how much those goals affected the course of football history. If you still think I'm being too harsh, let me quote Harry Kane himself. "I close my eyes and picture myself lifting the Premier League trophy. I trade my next 100 goals for that feeling." But the question is, Tottenham haven't won a major trophy in 38 years and England haven't won one in 56. So when could have Kane possibly cemented his legacy, and in what way did he fail to do so? Well, once Kane was asked to tell his story in his own words, and he started by saying, "Failure is a funny thing." And by the time he finished telling that story, you could indeed see that failure was an overarching theme. Kane admits he has been engulfed in self-doubt since he was a kid, that he struggled to find motivation within himself his entire life, always having to search for it somewhere else. Let's take as an example the time he was released from Arsenal for being too fat. And yes, you heard that right, Kane played for Arsenal as a kid. Regardless, he tells that story in a very specific way. He always mentions how his father didn't seem worried that an opportunity like that had been wasted, that he didn't even put any pressure on him to try and combat these adversities. He just told him to forget about it and move on. And I'm sure that is healthy and probably the best way to raise a child in many ways, but I couldn't help but feel a disconnect to that story. I have told you the stories of what seems like 1,000 footballers at this point, and as kids, 90% of them would rather die than waste an opportunity like that. In fact, a lot of them could have, if not for football, as grim as that might sound. Sometimes it seems that the lack of that inner fire that brings you to overcome your own limitations, to be greater than you thought you could be, is what Harry Kane lacks. Following this whole Arsenal fiasco, he ended up at his local club Ridgeway Rovers, which eventually led him to go on trial for Watford, where he faced Tottenham, impressing them enough to get an invitation to join their academy. And from there on out, things were a bit easier, I guess you could say comfortable. Most of his family were Tottenham fans. He grew up 15 minutes away from their grounds, and in a way, that rejection he had suffered provided him at times with what he lacked. As he said it himself, "Every time I played Arsenal, I thought, let's show them who's right and who's wrong. Looking back on it now, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. It gave me a drive that wasn't there before." Regardless, for a long time at Tottenham, he was not the most notable player. The same weight problems persisted, and it wasn't until he hit a growth spurt that everything changed. By 2010, he finished his season scoring 18 goals in 22 matches while competing with players 2 years older than him, leading towards his first contract at 16 and his first appearances for the main team, though he never left the bench. And it was at that moment that the fairy tale finally grew darker again. Seemingly incapable of leaving his mark in training, in his second season he didn't even manage to make the bench once throughout the first half of the season, and Tottenham began sending him out on loan after loan. First came Leyton Orient in the English third tier, and though his 5 goals in just 900 minutes weren't bad, they didn't convince Tottenham, who 6 months and a single goal later sent him back on loan once more, this time to Millwall, where Kane says he began wondering if he'd ever get to play a single Premier League game. Again, the theme of self-doubt takes center stage. Regardless, his time at Millwall was actually really good. At first glance, 9 goals in 27 matches in the Championship doesn't sound very good, but the thing is, 7 of those came in the last 14 matches of the season, and were keen taking Millwall from being in a dangerous spot just 5 points above the relegation line to finishing comfortably 17 points above it, leading Kane to be named the one who saved Millwall from relegation, and of course, the Championship's Young Player of the Year. However, this still wasn't enough. Despite even scoring a hat-trick for Tottenham during the preseason, he was still sent out on loan, this time to Norwich, which at least meant that he would finally get to play in the Premier League. But even that didn't pan out how he would have wished it to. 2 matches in, Kane broke his metatarsal, which put him on the sidelines for 2 whole months, meaning that by January he had started in just 2 Premier League matches, which prompted Tottenham to bring him back. And though they insisted he would be the replacement for Leandro Damião, who they had failed to sign during the winter market, after just 20 days, he was loaned once again, this time to Leicester, back in the Championship, where they hoped he could help them achieve promotion. However, not only would he fail at that task, he would also only get 650 minutes of game time over his 6 months there, leading him to question, and I am directly quoting him, "If I can't play in the Championship, how could I ever play in the Premier League?" And if you think that's what I mean when I say he was completely consumed by self-doubt, then let me tell you that he has admitted that one night his family came over and it had to be his father to stop him from leaving Leicester and going back to his hometown, getting into a heated discussion with Kane, who was ready to give up on everything. Can you imagine? And that's not even all that he has admitted to. He has said that he doubted himself because he felt he didn't look like a proper striker, and he pretty much confirmed that he's unable to find motivation from within, saying the only reason he managed to turn his career around in 2013 was that he watched a Tom Brady documentary and decided to imitate him. In reality, it was actually that what prompted him to face André Villas-Boas, simply telling him no when he told Kane that he'd be going on loan again, saying he'd rather stay at Tottenham and not play than go somewhere else. As strange as the motivation behind it might have been, at least this time around he was taking matters into his own hands, and he even says that that moment changed the rest of his life. He said, "I had the ability on the pitch, but not the confidence to stand up for myself. My childhood dream was right there, and I was waiting for someone else to hand it to me." Eventually this all paid off. Villas-Boas left, Tim Sherwood took over, and after a good performance coming off the bench against Benfica to turn the game on its head with 2 assists in 2 minutes, Kane got his first shot at the Premier League, being afforded 3 consecutive starts and scoring in all 3 matches, which finally served as his proper introduction to the Premier League. An impressed Pochettino would take over as coach the following season, betting heavily on Kane to be the team's new star player, which proved to be a great decision, with the striker grabbing 15 goals in the first half of the season and playing even better on the second half, with 2 goals and an assist versus Chelsea, 2 goals versus Arsenal, a goal and an assist versus Liverpool, and a hat-trick versus Leicester. However, if that first run could have made it seem like Harry Kane would be a player for the big games, then he would fail to score in the League Cup final against Chelsea, denying Tottenham of what could have been their first trophy in ages, as well as going on a dry streak of only 2 goals in 8 matches, allowing Aguero to get past him in a Golden Boot race to score 22 non-penalty goals. Close to 1 every 4 matches. Obviously not the worst, but you definitely would get the sense that Harry Kane should be scoring more, especially when compared to his rival Aguero, who scored almost a goal every 2 games he played against the top 6. Regardless, there was one upside to that season. Kane was named the best young player in the league and earned his first few matches for England, though, to be fair, he then almost made it seem like this season had been merely a purple patch, starting the next season with a further 13 matches with just a single goal, before finally getting his goal-scoring boots back on and still somehow managing to beat Aguero to the Golden Boot, as well as taking Tottenham to a 3rd-place finish, the best he had ever managed in the Premier League up to that point. Though the thought lingered, what if he had started the season properly, a few more goals and could have Tottenham won the title? I guess we'll never know. However, one thing that was much more palpable was Harry Kane's complete lack of goals at the Euro 2016, despite the fact that up till then his record in friendlies and qualifiers for England had been really impressive. But well, it was his first tournament, so I'll cut him some slack. The next season we saw the same plot repeat itself, this time an injury keeps Kane on the sidelines for 3 months, wasting his chance at finally playing in the Champions League, but then he comes back and starts scoring at an absurd rate, leading Tottenham to a 2nd place finish in the league, once again their best ever, and once again surprising everyone by coming out of nowhere with 7 goals in his last 2 matches to steal the Golden Boot right out of Lukaku's hands. By the end of 2017, Kane would be on 56 goals in a year, beating Ronaldo and Messi to the title of Europe's greatest goal scorer after 7 years of continuous dominance by those two. It was quite simply his peak. But again, though obviously cannot be blamed for it, you are left craving for more, asking if it wasn't for that injury could have Tottenham won the league. But well, despite all of that, there was another way to make history following a year like that. By the time February came around, Kane was just 7 goals away from breaking the Premier League goal-scoring record. It seemed for a second that it was destined for that to be his legacy, that it was written in the stars for him to be the one to break it. But then, he scored just 6 goals over the nearly 4 months that were left in the season, not only wasting his shot at the record, but also wasting the opportunity to win 3 golden boots in a row, allowing Mohamed Salah to overtake him, not only taking the golden boot that seemed to belong to Kane from the start, but also breaking the goal-scoring record. It was a bottle job of gigantic proportions. And when it seemed things couldn't get worse, they did. Alongside all of this, Kane failed to score in yet another semi-final, wasting Tottenham's shot at an FA Cup title, and then he went on to play his second ever tournament for England, the 2018 World Cup, where despite winning the Golden Boot, something that could be a legacy-defining moment for another player, he instead was mostly shamed for his performances, as his 6 goals consisted of 4 penalties and 2 goals against Tunisia, and above all, he had wasted a famous opportunity to square it to Sterling, who could have easily scored and taken England to the World Cup final. However, quick tangent, I gotta say, as iconic of a moment as this was in Kane's legacy, he was already offside when he got the ball. Even if he passed it to Sterling, the goal would have been disallowed. But moving on. The next season, perhaps mentally affected by the awful ending to the previous one, Kane's form dropped massively, which was only highlighted by Tottenham's incredible performances, still making it to the League Cup final, qualifying to the Champions League, and above all, making it to the Champions League final, despite Kane being unable to provide his usual goal contributions and being out injured for the 2 months that led up to that final. And it was right there that things got truly painful to watch. After Tottenham had made it past Dortmund, Man City and Ajax, Kane made it back right in time for the final, and instead of helping them go that extra step forwards towards glory, he played like a shadow of himself, completely unremarkable. As he left the pitch, his polar opposite walked alongside him with a gold medal, Divock Origi. He had played just 7 games all season, but had performed a miracle against Barcelona and scored in the final. He had done in a couple of nights what Kane hadn't managed to do in a decade. Origi was a cult hero. Over that same month, Kane went on to disappoint for England again, not scoring a single goal in the Nations League Final 4, and then followed it up with another disappointing season where he missed 16 games through injury. Only a year later would he be back to his best, by then a seemingly reimagined version of himself, now capable of creating chances as much as he was capable of scoring goals, getting 17 assists over that year, totaling 50 goal contributions in 49 matches and winning a 3rd Golden Boot. Though he failed to score in the final of the League Cup, going on without a trophy again, and above all, missed out once again on the PFA Player of the Year award, something that is also in a way a stain in his legacy. Over summer, he had maybe one of his brightest moments, the Euro 2020, scoring 4 goals in the 3 matches up till the final, including a winning goal in extra time in the semi-finals against Denmark, which was obviously memorable. But then, in the final, he failed to register a single shot or even to create a single chance. He was completely anonymous, and once England went down on penalties, even though he scored his, it was hard not to look at all of this like just another wasted opportunity. Ever since then, he seemed to go into a huge identity crisis, trying to force his way out of Tottenham, looking for another club where glory would be maybe closer to his reach, but failing completely and ending up stuck there once again. This year, things look the same as they've always been. Now 30 years old, Kane is still completely trophyless. His great start to the season was completely overshadowed by Haaland, and his performances in the World Cup with 5 goal contributions in 5 matches were overshadowed by his penalty miss against France. Now, will Kane ever win a title? Will he ever have a legacy-defining moment? So far, has all of this been just Tottenham's fault? England's maybe? They say he could be moving to Bayern soon. Is that a solution? I guess you tell me, and I'll see you next week. Bye.